Welcome back to the second hour of News and Views right here on Salam Media. It is gone 18 after 9 o'clock. And we are now announcing our 2026 tour to Al Aqsa. It's the Discover Aqsa tour, which starts from the 4th to the 15th of July, the school holidays, of course. And we do have Maulana Musa Akudi, who is the spiritual guide on this amazing tour. The package includes return flights on Ethiopian Airlines, ex-Johannesburg. Breakfast, supper, and transfer is included. Expert tour guides and 4-star hotels. Approximately 3 to 4 nights in Jordan, 7 nights in Aqsa, the old city, and also the opportunity to explore the historic Petra Caves, Wadi Rum, and Amman. The price is 39,900 per person sharing. You can book right now at Salam Media on 081 717 2300 or contact Ayub Dadabai directly on 082 786 0078. So welcome back to News and Views. We are now joined by Hassen Seria, Press TV correspondent in South Africa. And we are going to be asking the all-important question: has the US-Iran relationship reached a turning point? As we've just heard as well, that Iran says it is closing or has closed the Strait of Hormuz yet again. Assalamu alaikum to you, Hassen Seria. Welcome to the program. Nice to have you here.
Wa alaikum salam. Thanks for having me, Julie.
Okay, so here we are again asking the all-important question. The Strait of Hormuz, it's been closed yet again. What is the situation currently? I think a day or two ago, everyone was very elated when they'd heard, I think on Friday, when the strait had been reopened.
Indeed, I think we're looking at a situation that is constantly changing and fast developing because of the two sides that are involved here. That we are talking about relations that are premised on major distrust. And this is because of the Iranian experience with the Americans, going back, for example, to the signing of the JCPOA, where the Americans were party to that and then they withdrew from it. We had two instances within a period of time now. If we look at June of last year, if we look at February of this year as well, where the Iranians were sitting at the negotiating table with the Americans. They thought that they were making progress, that there was good progress. And during that period, the Iranians came under attack, either from the Israeli side or, as in February of this year, the Americans and the Israelis. So, based on that, we've had this constantly changing situation. Our understanding at this point in time is that the Strait of Hormuz actually is now open because overnight there were, of course, that first round of talks that took place at Lake Lucerne in Switzerland. And from that, the two core partners that have brokered these talks, that is Qatar and Pakistan, they have issued a joint statement in which they have said that much progress has actually now been made between the Iranian and American sides in terms of coming up with a mechanism for the oversight of these talks to see that there's implementation. We know that from the Iranian side, they were demanding, and this is what led to that announcement over the weekend of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz again, was that they wanted a halt to all of the Zionist Israeli aggression on Lebanon, including the withdrawal of those occupying forces. And it seems that during yesterday, when the Iranians decided to, for a period, suspend their participation in the talks, that the Americans were able to sufficiently pressure the Zionist regime in order to get those concessions, that the Israelis are now abiding by the agreement of that 14-point plan, that Lebanon, there will be a cessation of hostilities there, and also to a degree we understand from what the Israelis are also saying, is that they will withdraw from certain regions. So the situation is constantly changing, and at the moment there is information that is suggesting that there is some movement at least taking place through the Strait of Hormuz. And I think that also talks to some of the points that have been raised after that first round of talks at Lake Lucerne, Julie.
So they currently, the negotiating teams or the peace making people are in Lucerne as you and I talk. And I should imagine that these talks are going to be very important indeed. On Friday, when it was stated that the Strait of Hormuz had opened shortly thereafter, after all of the elation, we do know that Israel then once again attacked Lebanon,
Mhm.
and obviously the feeling was, or the statement that was put out at the time by Netanyahu, was that they're not going to give back any of the land that they have taken from the Lebanese on that, on the border between Israel and Lebanon. They refuse that. That is not going to be part of the negotiations at all. And he was also quite, stroppy about saying that they're going to advance further into Lebanon. I'm glad to hear that that is going to be a bone of contention on the part of Iran. They too are standing firm, suggesting that not unless the attacks on Lebanon stops completely, will they then open up the Strait of Hormuz. So it seems as if there has been some form of reprieve. It also seems as if Trump has put pressure on Netanyahu. How do you see all of that playing out? Because Trump is very fickle. You can just whisper something in his ear and he flip-flops from side to side.
Look, I think the reality for Trump at this point in time, and if we look at some of the polls that are coming out, even from within the Zionist regime, is that they all seeing this as a victory for Iran. That the war that was launched, the Ramadan war, as the Iranians call it, at the end of February, that the Iranians have been successful. This is the assessment within Israel. Even the polls are showing that. From the American side as well, the American president is currently facing his lowest ratings. So when we take all of this into context, uh, Trump has to look at his domestic reality. He's got to take decisions now that is going to protect him for the midterms as well. And so those become the key factors. I think if we look at this a bit more broadly, we look at the reality of the October the 7th of 2023, when the Palestinian resistance launched the Operation Al-Aqsa flood. And we look at the posture and the position of the global community as such. We're talking here about the United States, we're talking about the West, we're talking about even many of the Arab regimes. They merely issued statements. They did not take any tangible steps to halt the Zionist aggression and the genocide that played out in the Gaza Strip and even in the West Bank, and even what was happening as far as Lebanon is concerned, as far as Iran is concerned, and so on. What we see here in this achievement from the Iranians, where even before they went into this agreement just about a week ago, when Israel again decided that it was going to go on the rampage and attack the Lebanese capital, Beirut, the southern suburbs of the capital, the Dahia, we saw Iran standing firm, saying that the terms of the agreement is that Lebanon is included in the ceasefire and America has to keep Israel at bay. It needs to rein in this rabid dog. And that is exactly what the Iranians have achieved here. They have, through these talks and the outcome of that conflict that was launched by Israel and the US at the end of February, they have managed to achieve what the entire world failed to do, and that is to get America to put a halt to the Israeli aggression. Of course, there are still some skirmishes, or there are still some arguments where the Israelis are still trying to push, but the Iranians have managed to achieve this. And this is quite significant because this starts changing the reality on the ground, in that Israel now knows that it cannot act with impunity, that it cannot just act without there being any consequences. And that is what the war with Iran has now proved capable. The Iranians also are, from their own experience with the talks and with the agreements they've had with the Americans, and this is what we see from this mechanism that has now been put in place, that was announced by Qatar and Pakistan, is that there's an oversight committee that is going to ensure to see that each of the elements of the 14-point plan is actually adhered to by the United States. And one of that, for example, that has already come into fruition is that the Strait of Hormuz will be opened, that Iran will be managing through its Persian Gulf mechanism. It will be managing all of the traffic that moves through the Strait of Hormuz. And that, of course, is being done in cooperation with Oman, whose territorial waters are shared with Iran in the Strait of Hormuz. Then the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has also announced that one of the key things, and this will be the top priority at all times, is that the ceasefire in Lebanon must be respected, and at the same time that the Israelis must withdraw from all of those territory. And if any of these points are not adhered to, if at any point the Iranians feel that the Americans or the Israelis are not fulfilling their commitments under this MOU, as it were, that the Iranians will halt. And that is the power with which the Iranians are operating at this point in time. So we're seeing a real change here in terms of Israel being kept on a leash here, that Israel is realizing and being taught that it does not have the impunity that it thought it did, even with the United States and Europe and many of the Arab countries being allowing it to have done that previously, that now the game has changed, that we're in a new era, that we're looking at a new situation within the Middle East or West Asia. And that is something that the Iranians went into this saying, that they envision a new region, a region of peace, a region in which the American occupation within the region, through all of these bases that they have in all of these Arab regimes, that all of that will have to change, that they will have to leave, and the countries of the region will be able to work on a way forward. And I think that is what we see coming through as well with the participation here of Qatar as well as Pakistan, Julie.
Okay, the other very important issue is, in fact, regarding the 14-point plan, is
Mm.
Trump having made a statement. And I quote, I think we're going to hopefully make progress on the nuclear issue. That's a very, very big issue here. He goes on to say, make progress on the Lebanon ceasefire issue. So, tick, that has been done so far. And he says these are the two big things that we are focusing on. The nuclear issue is part of that 14-point plan. And I know that
Mhm.
Iran will not, give in. Given to any pressure from the Americans, what do you suppose is going to happen there then, if Iran holds its ground and says nothing doing, with holding on to, the uranium deal for now? We're not going to give up on
Mhm.
that. They obviously won't be as blatant. They'll be very diplomatic. However, that is a huge point as far as the West is concerned. Notwithstanding, of
In-
course, that Israel too have got some form of a nuclear program that they're working on as well, and other countries around the world.
mhm. So, of course, in the case of the Zionist regime, Israel, their nuclear stockpile is not just enriched uranium. They've actually got warheads. This is an open secret. It has not been admitted by the Zionists, but we've even had individuals who worked within this program, such as Mordechai Vanunu, who has revealed this to the world, that the Israeli regime has a nuclear weapons program and there is a stockpile of nuclear warheads. On the Iranian side, it's quite different. The Iranians are pursuing nuclear technology that dates back to even before the 1979 revolution, which is essentially for civilian use here, for energy purposes, for medical purposes, and for other uses within this civilian arena. there is no plan from the Iranians that have been repeatedly indicated, even from the IAEA assessments. And the IAEA, again, here, a major difference. The IAEA has absolute access to the Iranian sites. Of course, that changed after June of last year when the Americans bombed some of those nuclear facilities. The Israelis do not allow any form of assessment or monitoring of their nuclear facilities, apart from not giving the world a clear indication of exactly what they are up to. In addition to that, the Zionist regime is not a signatory to the Non Proliferation Treaty, whereas Iran is, and the indications are that Iran has constantly abided by those regulations of the NPT and has even voluntarily given access to the IAEA to its nuclear facilities, up to the point that they've even been allowed to have CCTV cameras installed in these facilities. So there's 24-hour monitoring of those facilities. So I think the nuclear issue is clearly something that is a sensitive issue, but I think also the Western media has overplayed this. This is again on the hype of Benjamin Netanyahu, the Zionist regime, and its campaign to create this bogeyman in terms of the Iranians having any form of nuclear capability. Under the NPT, which Iran is, in fact, one of the first signatories to, Iran does have the right to enrich uranium for civilian purposes, and that is exactly what it is doing. And so Iran will continue to protect that right and to, of course, argue in these talks for that right. Of course, the issue here is that Iran does have a a certain degree of highly enriched uranium. Now, this is only to 60%. And I think the important thing here is to be very clear that Iran only started enriching uranium to 60% as a reaction or a response or a retaliation to the Americans and the Europeans failing to implement their side of the JCPOA. The Americans, of course, having pulled out, and the European partners, of course, absolutely failing, for example, to implement mechanisms for the movement of money. They still took Iran off the SWIFT international banking system, and they also did not implement their agreements in terms of the deals and the business agreements that had been implemented with delivery of those aspects. So it was in reaction to that that the Iranians enriched uranium to 60%. Does Iran need 60%? Not for civilian purposes, no. But this was used as a mechanism of leverage. And so the idea still of Iran having nuclear capability that is headed towards being used for weapons, that is a false thing. That is something that is based in Western propaganda, in Zionist propaganda, and in Western mainstream media propaganda. That is absolutely untrue. This 60% enriched uranium is actually a, um, a bargaining chip that the Iranians hope to use in any form of negotiations. And I think that is how the Iranians will use it in these talks. But at the same time, protecting their right as captured within the NPT for them to still continue with their research as far as nuclear technology is concerned, and also to still do their own enrichment of uranium up to a certain degree for civilian purposes.
Hassen Seria, that's where we leave it. Let's hope and pray, inshallah, that this is definitely, the last we're going to hear about a broken deal regarding the ceasefire. Trump is also in Switzerland for these talks, so hoping and praying that a deal is reached finally. And hopefully we can all start picking up the pieces and moving along. And hats off to Iran for, sticking their ground and, being there for the support of the Palestinian struggle. I guess the only other issue now is once the attacks on Lebanon stops, I'm just wondering if it's not going to start up in a huge way within Palestine itself and move from Gaza to possibly the West Bank. But for now, let's just wait and see. But thank you indeed for your insights. Go well, and Assalamu alaikum to you.
Wa alaikum salam. Thanks for having had me.
9:38. This is News and Views moving along, and we will be going into our final interview for the morning. Please do stay with us.